The Elden Ring DLC has been out for some time now, and while massively praised, it's also sparked a bit of an interesting conversation. Many say the DLC is too difficult and that it's not properly balanced compared to the base game. Hello and welcome, fellow virgins, it is iSuperVirgin here, and today I'd like to talk about how difficult the Elden Ring DLC truly is. Elden Ring is, well, for some people, or for a lot of people, their first Souls-like. A lot of people have either already played the Dark Souls franchises before Elden Ring, or they first joined with Elden Ring. It's why it was so popular, it's why it's been so praised. I mean, hell, it won Game of the Year. But because of this, a lot of people don't realize how older games, how older titles, actually used to handle their difficulty. Like, for instance, Dark Souls 2, which always found it extremely fun to just throw more enemies at you, and that meant more difficulty. It's seen as the worst Dark Souls in the trilogy, but it's still a Dark Souls game, so it's not that bad. Even still, they used a pretty scummy or a bit of an easy way to get the game more difficult by doing dumb stuff instead of adding new enemies or adding interesting enemies. And so sometimes difficulty does get added in a way that people don't expect. So it may be a bit different from the Elden Ring base game than it is from the DLC. I do feel, though, that people aren't really as prepared for the DLC as they think they are. A lot of people have either already started a New Game Plus, which is not really good because then you, of course, add a layer of difficulty to the game. And I think a lot of people have already not really completed the game. I understand that you have to complete a boss that is pretty endgame. However, there is a very easy way to pretty not that far into the game, get to that boss, get to Moog, and then win from Moog, and then get into the DLC. But I do feel like you should realize that this is an end game DLC. You're supposed to have completed the entire game. Game's been out for 2 years, so if you haven't already, do it. I know I hadn't before the DLC came out, so I made sure that I was prepared. I think I was level 170 or something when I did start the DLC, and that is honestly a beautiful, perfect level to do the DLC on. Which doesn't mean that you can't do it 20 levels lower, but it's just useful to know that that is a high enough level that the DLC can handle. Despite that, though, I do have to say, those spinny Beyblade pricks that start, like, there's one right at the start of the DLC and they're all over the overworld and they randomly sit there out of nowhere, they start spinning on you. Hell, they do way too much damage, they're way too annoying, and hell, they're pretty much what is wrong with Elden Ring in general. I feel every single enemy that just does a whole spinny attack or has to be really extremely fast with spins and whatnot tends to be a bit more, I don't know, less fun to play against. I think that's what I can really tell what it is. It's why I think a lot of people had a lot of struggles with Mikola, which of course was also very, very fast, but was still done in a good way, a better way than how these enemies are handled, because these guys are some real pricks. Honestly though, before I really continue with the video, I would like to know whether or not that you right here watching me did or did not struggle with the DLC so far, because there are different types of struggles, right? You could struggle because you're under leveled and because, well, you get hit once or twice and you're done, or you could struggle because you don't know the enemy patterns and you have to learn the patterns and whatnot. One can be more annoying than the other, of course, but still, I'd like to know, are you having troubles with the DLC? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, why not click that subscribe button for more gaming commentary just like this every Thursday and Saturday. If there's one tip I can really give you guys, it's just try to really explore. I think by the time I did like the first main boss, I had enough Scadutree fragments to be level 3 or level 4 for the DLC, and this means that you get more resistances and damage. If I remember correctly, it's about a 5% increase each time, which means that at that point I had a 20% increase to my resistances and a 20% increase to my damage to the enemies of the DLC, which meant that I would die a lot slower and that I would do a lot more damage. And I felt that because the difficulty wasn't necessarily really high, but it wasn't that I could just roam around freely, not really caring. I could still get damaged enough, and if I did things too recklessly, I'd still end up also dying. And I did die a couple of times so far in the DLC. Now, I do have to say that if you're really struggling with the DLC, there's nothing wrong with that, but I do feel like you're not using everything you have. Scadutree fragments is one thing because it levels you, but of course you have to learn how to play against certain enemies. That's one thing. So we have enemy patterns, we have those Scadutree fragments, but honestly, use your tiers, use your mimic tier. It's not bad to play with your mimic tier. That doesn't really matter. People aren't really going to care. Like I said, I'm playing with an endgame character. I'm about level 170 when I started it. I think I'm already level 200 with how easy it is to level in the DLC, and I feel like the DLC isn't really that difficult in my eyes. When I heard a lot of people struggling with it, I was actually surprised because although I have played the Souls-like games and I have played all those games, I do not feel like I'm like extremely good at them. I'm good at them, I know how they work, but I wouldn't say I'm perfect at them. I still screw around, I still do one hit too many because I get greedy. I still make a lot of mistakes when I fight certain enemies or bosses, or I don't know the patterns perfectly yet. And that is fine, and you could be in that same boat. But I haven't really struggled, except maybe for like one side boss where I really had to focus up. But other than that, the DLC has been pretty straightforward. Yes, I use the mimic tier like I said. Yes, I use like the heaviest armor with the most resistances. Yes, I have a big bonk weapon that I just use to bonk people's head in. That is pretty much the things I use when I play the DLC, and I feel like those do help indeed, but I have also played with the backhand blades, and I've also played with the throwable blades. Like, there's a lot of different things you can use here that even the DLC offers you, and that are really cool and fun to use. So I feel like even the DLC is giving you this stuff. And just when you explore, right, you don't have to necessarily defeat a lot of enemies or defeat a lot of bosses to get this good, like, armor, to get these good items in the game. There is just a lot of stuff out there that you can find just by exploring. And I am far from alone being the only person saying that, right? Saying that the DLC isn't too difficult. When we look at Cenat, for some reason, actually did talk about this, saying that he found the DLC to be also not too difficult, and that it's literally a skill issue, which is not my words, it's his, right? He's saying this, although it is kind of a skill issue.
It's a skill issue. I'm asking your ass. But your ass, though. Because you really, like, say it's too hard. Put your big boy pants on, go out there, and go fight. Like, what are you talking about? Like, here's the thing, right? This is the first major release since the actual game 2 years ago, correct? Yes or no? If you went through all that hassle 2 years ago, why the fuck would they make a DLC for you to breeze past and be done with in a day or two? Make it make sense.
He does make a very good point though when he talks in this clip, because he does say that why would they make the DLC easy, right? The game's been out for 2 years. The game has been known to be difficult. Why would they make a DLC that is easy to run through and that after a little while you're just like, I'm done with it. That's the DLC. Bye everybody. I played my DLC, I enjoyed it, and that was it. Like, it's logical that they make a DLC that's difficult so you get to struggle again and you get to have those achievements again when you do overcome those struggles. But I don't want you to understand me wrong. This video wasn't made to talk about the difficulty and say like, hey, you're bad at the game for not being good at it, right? I don't want to bash you, I don't want to shame you. It's logical that this game can be hard, this DLC can be hard. It's just simply, in my eyes, a weird phenomenon. Like I said, I'm used to playing this DLC and not having too much difficulty with it, so it's a bit weird that people have such a difficulty for, like, I guess that's how I feel about it. I mean, hell, you're watching a commentary channel, of course I'm going to give my opinion. As I stated in my previous video, though, we are way too over-competitive with this. A lot of people will probably shame me for using the mimic tier. I really do not care, because no matter how difficult or how easy you make a game, you know, if you're having fun with the game, I think that's valid, and I can't really shame someone for enjoying a game, right? But the game is made to be difficult, so I also understand that making it easy would kind of take away part of that experience. I think if the DLC would be easy, it would honestly be a flop. I think people would either waste their time making a new character or doing New Game Plus and then instantly going into the DLC or trying all different kinds of things to make it more difficult for them, which I feel like is not the right way to do it, where it's more like you have to overcome struggles rather than create them for yourself and then try to overcome those. That makes a lot less sense, and there are a lot more steps definitely for a DLC, and FromSoft has shown here that they can deliver a DLC that is difficult but still actually pretty good. The challenges that the game gives you, or the DLC gives you, well, they come in different shapes and sizes, right? It either means that you have an enemy that you already know from the base game, like rats, like wolves, like a bunch of different enemies that have more health and more damage than they do in the base game, which means that you have to use your knowledge that you already have of the game, those attack patterns, the way that they work, the way that they react to certain things, and then use that to win those fights, because now, well, they have way more health and damage, so you're gonna have to fight them as if they're new enemies for you. And then you also, of course, have new enemies, and those new enemies also have high health and damage, so you also have to learn new attack patterns. Like I said, those spinny boys, those Beyblades, I swear to God, they're pricks, I hate them, and they could be removed from the game, all I care. But there are really cool enemies that are added, and I'd say that the bosses are really the highlight of this DLC, with some extremely amazing bosses, beautifully made, really cool attacks, and honestly, a challenge, but also still very fun to overcome. The DLC is overall an amazing expansion, and CD Projekt Red actually even tweeted this, or rather The Witcher, but of course we know that CD Projekt Red is behind The Witcher, and they tweeted, well, I'll read it here for you. For the last 8 years, The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine had the honor of being the best reviewed expansion for a role-playing game, but Elden Ring gets to wear that crown now. Congratulations to the entire team at From Software on their stellar work. And that shows that even from another company, or even from reviewers or anyone else, I've heard lots and lots of praise of this DLC as well, until it got into the hands of the public. So I do feel like a lot of people do enjoy this game a lot, enjoy this DLC a lot, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of you that are now saying that it's too difficult will look very fondly in the future, and you will look very fondly back on this DLC and what it delivered, because you did actually enjoy those moments, believe it or not. I myself have also not yet really completed the DLC. I have about 20 hours in it, I think, but Jesus Christ, this is a huge expansion to the game. I have still a lot of items, enemies, bosses, all to learn and to know and to understand what it's all about. So I can't say that my opinion is about the entire DLC. I have to give that as a disclaimer. Although I do feel that a lot of people didn't get 20 hours in and already started saying that it was too difficult. So I do feel like with those 20 hours, I can say it is not that difficult. That is really not something that I believe FromSoft has done in this case. It is a challenge and it offers a struggle, just the same way as Elden Ring did. It's of course logical that when you start in the base game, you have the guy on his horse there in the armor. Everyone knows him. You start off the game, you open the door after the tutorial, and he's right there. And he's like, "Oh yeah, let's go beat him," and you get your ass handed to you, because that's what the game is about. It's telling you like you can't handle everyone here until you're high enough level. People didn't cry about Elden Ring being too difficult back then, and now in the DLC, you enter the area and you run around a bit and it's not too difficult, and then you face up maybe like the first side boss there is. I'm not gonna tell you exactly where he is, and maybe he smacks you and he drops you dead, and you're like, wow, this is difficult again after playing so many hours and being level so many. That's the point of the DLC. It's supposed to be difficult. It's supposed to be the struggle. Otherwise, you'd, like I said, breeze past it, and you wouldn't enjoy it as much as you did enjoy Elden Ring, because exploration is still the huge part of Elden Ring that made it as fun to explore, because it's such a vast open world, such a cool world with lots of different lore. Although I do have to say that I understand barely any of it, it looks cool at least, right? It's fun to roam around in and to see these things happening. And so the DLC is no different from that. And I feel like people have just a warped perspective of what they played 2 years ago, because they haven't played with the struggle when they first opened Elden Ring. If there's one thing I really would like to put out as a message, is that it is completely fine if you do find it to be too difficult. I'm saying my opinion here, right? This commentary channel, my opinion. So if you do find it difficult, well, first, let me know down in the comments, like I said. But the game, like the whole Souls-like franchise is based, like the whole genre is based about just being difficult. That's the whole idea, because if not, it would be way too easy. And honestly, that is, of course, a bit more niche. Not everyone's going to enjoy it, and that is also completely fine if it's not for you. I mean, I have way too many times where you have a very generic game coming out. Ubisoft. It fails to stand out, and then it becomes bland and generic, and it doesn't really stand out, and everyone forgets about it within like a couple of months' time. Elden Ring is 2 years old, and it's still known as one of the biggest games out there. Everyone knows what this game is. 2 years old. And I'm not just saying that because there are many games that are older that are also still very known. When you look at Red Dead Redemption 2, which came out 6 years ago, that is also a very known game. A lot of people, any gamer will know what that game is. And that's what I'm trying to tell you here. If it's a bit more niche, well, maybe less people are going to be able to enjoy it, but the people who are able to enjoy it will enjoy it even more. And that's what makes it that much better. That's why games should be niche. And I could talk a lot more about this in a future video, which I am planning to do so. So, like I've stated a couple of times in the video, subscribe to the channel and you might actually see that video. Now, if I do feel like there is a bit of a thing with difficulty in these games, well, Elden Ring has taken an advantage, and it's pretty obvious in the DLC as well, of delayed attacks. And I think delayed attacks are a way bigger problem than a lot of health and damage. Because if a enemy can do a lot of damage to you, that means you have less space and less of a window for fuck-ups, right? Because if you fuck up once or twice, well, you're already dead and you have to restart and you have to do the fight over again. However, if there's delayed attacks, and there's even a difference between them charging that delay attack or not, that leaves a lot more room open for you to screw up, right? So there's either a higher chance of you screwing up, and then it doesn't even matter how much damage or health you do, because if you keep screwing up, you'll eventually end up dead as well. Or there's just, if you screw up, you're pretty much screwed completely. There's a very big difficulty difference between those two, and I'd say that you're making it too difficult for yourself sometimes as well. In general, I'd say that this DLC is really well done, and FromSoft has once again proven why they're still a very, very good company. It has difficulties, it has challenges, but I'm sure with the right preparation and a high enough level character with the right items, you will be able to complete the DLC with, well, some struggles, like I said. Like I've also stated before, the DLC is going to be looked fondly back to in years' time. People are going to think, wow, that was a really good expansion, and I really did enjoy that, and not a lot of companies tend to deliver on this. Because that's also something that we should remember, how FromSoft is one of the few companies out there that still delivers an expansion that the people actually wanted, the people actually liked. And you'll see that you actually did like it. So maybe just like Cenat, you will actually later think to yourself like, damn, this was definitely a skill issue. But what do you think? Have you, like I said, been struggling with the DLC and can't really seem to understand it or get past certain enemies or bosses? Or do you also feel like me, that it isn't really that difficult and you don't really get the uproar? Well, let me know down in the comments below what you think, and while you're down there, why not subscribe to the channel? Like I've stated before, every Thursday and Saturday, a gaming commentary video just like this one. Anyhow, I hope you have a great day. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.